My name is David Malcom, and this is my 60-second sermon. John chapter 21 says this, "And Simon Peter said unto them, I go a-fishing. They said unto him, We also will go with thee. They went forth and entered into a ship immediately, and that night they caught nothing. But when the morning was now come, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples knew that it was Jesus. Then Jesus said unto them, Children, have you any meat? They answered him, No. And he said unto them, Cast the net on the right side of the ship, and you shall find. They cast thereof, and now they were not able to draw it in for the multitude of the fishes. Therefore that disciple whom Jesus loved said unto Peter, It is the Lord. Now when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he girded his fisher's coat unto him, for he was naked, and did cast himself into the sea. And the other disciple came in a little ship, dragging the net with fishes. As soon as they were come to land, they saw a fire of coals there, and fish laid thereon, and bread. And Jesus said unto them, Bring of the fish which you have now caught." This passage in John chapter number 21 is following Jesus' resurrection, and it's probably one of the most interesting passages to me because it would start out and seem as if it was part 2 of Jesus' Fishers of Men series. If you remember the exact phrase that's used on the boat at the beginning of his ministry to Peter, Jesus says here. Peter's on the boat, it's after Jesus' resurrection, and they don't yet know that he's resurrected, or they have not yet begun to trust what it means to follow him after this. And they've gone back to fishing, and so the disciples have gone with him. Jesus is on the beach, unrecognizable to those that would look at him, even to his disciples. But when he calls out, he says something that's familiar. He says, Have you caught any fish? They respond back to him that they hadn't, and he says what he said previously at his very first encounter with Peter. He says, Then cast your nets on the other side. Now, Peter has heard these exact words before, but something different happens this time. For some reason, it doesn't register in him as what Jesus has said to him in their very first encounter that had caused him to drop to his knees. No, instead, it's John that recognizes it. And John says, writing about himself, the one whom Jesus loved dove into the water. It's a fascinating passage to me for a couple of reasons. It's a fascinating passage to me because I do believe it's part 2 of the Fishers of Men series. I believe it's a lesson in what Jesus is looking for, but also it's fascinating to me because of the response that John uses after he says that Jesus loves him. You know, oftentimes when we hear Jesus calling out to us, we do what Peter intended to do. We want to cast our nets again, and we want to bring in Jesus a great full of fish, a great harvest of souls, because Jesus said that we would be fishers of men, and he's asking for fish. But John does something extraordinary. John does something that proves that he knows that Jesus loves him. John, when Jesus asks for fish, decides not to be a fisherman, but to jump in the water and to be a fish. I think one of the things that's easy to miss in our servant culture and in our desire to change the world is sometimes when Jesus is asking for fish, the best thing to do is dive in, let him catch you, have another encounter with God, and that will prepare us in the way nothing else can to change the world and to be bait if we're already in the net. Jesus loves to encounter each and every one of us. And when he's looking for fish, I say, Here I am.